Hello and welcome to Decision NYC with Ben Max. I'm Ben Max, your host and the executive editor of Gotham Gazette. The 2021 New York City election season is well underway and it's poised to be the most significant municipal election in decades. All of city government is on the ballot, and because so few incumbents are eligible to run for their current seats due to term limits, New Yorkers are electing many new office holders and the next roster of leadership for our city. There will be a new mayor of New York City elected here in 2021, as well as a new city controller, several new borough presidents, and many new city council members. And that's not all that's on the ballot. A number of incumbents are eligible for and seeking re-election, including the city's public advocate. And there's a very crowded and competitive race for Manhattan District Attorney and more. Party primaries are set for June, and the general election in the fall will culminate on November 2nd. This is the first full set of municipal elections that will feature both early voting and the new ranked choice voting system, which only applies to party primaries and special elections. And we'll explain ranked choice voting in its own show. This city election cycle would be of enormous importance under more usual circumstances, but it's unfolding at a time of great crisis for our city, raising the stakes of the decisions that you, the voter, will make. The new wave of city leadership will quite clearly make or break New York City's recovery from the devastation of the COVID-19 pandemic and its many impacts on health, families, jobs, education, housing, and much more. It's important to note, of course, that the city faced a number of major crises even before COVID, and several of those have only worsened. So it's an important time of choosing here in New York City, and we're pleased to bring you this series of interviews with candidates running for citywide offices, mayor, public advocate, controller, as well as interviews for other offices for borough president, district attorney, and more. And there will be debates. But these one-on-one conversations will help you to get to know the candidates better, learn about their backgrounds, their positions, their vision for the future of the city, and what they want to do with the office they're running for. We hope this and other interviews will help you sort through your many choices and make informed decisions when it's time to vote. So today's interview, joining me now by Zoom, is Stacey Prussman, who's a Libertarian candidate for New York City Mayor. Stacey, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Before we get into your campaign for mayor, tell us about your background, who you are, where you come from, what your life and career have been before you decided to run for mayor.
Well, I'm a native New Yorker. I've been born and bred in Brooklyn, New York. I came from a background of political family. Both sides of my family have been in different parties. My mom's sides were Democrats and a lot of my dad's sides were Republicans, and I became a Libertarian. So that explains a lot. And I came from a background of performance. I grew up in the arts. I'm an actress. I was a comedian and a public speaker. And I was involved with many bipartisan voter registration campaigns throughout the years. So I've been involved in the political process for many, many years, as well as doing advocacy for different organizations.
And other than voting, are there certain causes that you've been most involved with?
Yes, two causes I've been involved with. Animal rights is one huge cause. And ending homelessness is another, and mental health advocacy. I'm a mental health speaker, so that's one of my major causes.
So you decided to run for mayor. Explain that decision, what went into it, what makes you think this is the right time for a run, and what does it mean to be running as a Libertarian in this election in 2021?
Well, it's interesting because people have asked me, what made you decide now? Was it the pandemic? And actually it wasn't. This was in my head for probably about 6 years. It wasn't a new idea. And I spoke to some people that I'm friends with that are in politics. And I said, I really want to run, specifically after, during the pandemic when we had to sort of shelter in place and there wasn't a lot of movement because I was touring for most of my life. And so I had to stay put. And when I really meditated on it and thought about it, I decided to do it. And it was the time for me to do it because I feel that I have a lot of really great policies and ideas that are going to help New Yorkers get past this pandemic.
What does it mean to be a Libertarian in New York City? I've interviewed other Libertarian candidates. They have kind of different definitions. How do you think of yourself as a Libertarian? What does that mean?
Well, I believe there's something very pure about being a Libertarian because you could be very right, very left, very center, and still be a Libertarian. It's a party that there's conversation, and with conversation comes solutions. So you can hear one person's idea or a solution about a problem and somebody else's, and then you kind of work together to make it happen. And that's what I love about the Libertarian Party. It's not as it kind of takes away that party politics that we've been seeing in our country, the partisanship and the issues that we've been having that are causing a divide in the country, in New York, and well, specifically the United States of America. So.
And now, when people think of libertarian, they often think of liberty, of the idea of less government.
Yeah.
Is that yeah? Can you say a little bit more about that?
Absolutely, yes. I wanted to get to that as well. Libertarians believe that the government, we don't need as much government as we have. Some believe we don't need it at all. Some people we need a little bit. You know, I believe there's a happy medium, but we need less of it. I think people do really well when they're allowed to be themselves and they're allowed to thrive. I think when the government holds people back, when they put too many restrictions and zonings on things, I think it creates problems. And I think it doesn't let us really become the most capitalistic, most sort of like enriching, most diverse city we could be. And I think there's a lot of people with different ideas, and there's a lot of antiquated laws on the books that need to be taken off, or antiquated zoning laws. And I think with taking a lot of those things out will actually make us thrive as a city.
And so you mentioned zoning a couple of times there. Would you subscribe to the belief that basically there needs to be a sweeping sort of reimagining of city zoning laws that allow for development wherever the market allows?
I don't think it should be an open development for anything anywhere. I don't believe that either. But I think zoning laws are in place right now that are antiquated. They don't make sense. They don't serve the community. If something's not serving the community, it needs to be taken away. And I think that people haven't really done that. Either they're involved in some political issues, or their pockets are being stuffed by a company. But I believe that there's a lot of laws and zoning issues that need to just be taken out. And one by one. I mean, not every zoning issue is bad, but there might be a lot that are, which I believe there are.
Where else do you think city government needs to step back? What are some of the ways where if you're elected mayor, you would try to shrink the role, the size of New York City government?
Well, specifically in education, because I think I want to democratize education. I mean, the mayor's office just assigns one person, they assign the next person. So I want the local school board to start electing, districts start electing their officials, the people that look over the schools, because I don't believe that the mayor should just be pointing at people and electing people. I don't want to go into people's communities and tell them how to run their communities when they're in their own communities, working hard in their communities, going to school in their communities, serving their own communities. That's how you get people involved in education, is to be a part of the process. So I want to democratize education.
And part of that I saw on your website is ending mayoral control of city schools. You don't want, as mayor, to sort of run the democratization of that. You want to get rid of mayoral control and return to a localized model.
Right. I believe that works the best. I do believe strongly that when people are involved and in their schools, and there's not this higher power telling them what to do, that's not really in their schools. I mean, I don't live in 20 million communities around the city. I live in my own community. So I want to be involved in my community. And just like I want you to be involved in your community and making those decisions. And I think that's the most enriching thing you can do. And that's how you get the parents involved and the students more involved in their learning. And every community has different needs and they need to be serviced differently. Yes.
Let's come back to the sort of jump to running for mayor and the possibility of being mayor. The mayor of New York City is in charge of well over 300,000 employees. There's a $90+ billion budget. Can you speak to what would prepare you to sort of take the reins of that massive organization? Even if you do want to shrink it as a libertarian, there would still be hundreds of thousands of city employees and a massive budget. Talk a little bit about being prepared for that type of role.
Well, I've run companies before in the past. My organization skills are well in to do that. I also believe that there's a lot of money wasted, and I'm very good at budgeting. So I've been actually doing that now with my team, looking at the budget, what we could find, where the money is, where I want to put it. I want to make sure that nothing is wasted, because we don't have a lot of money in the city right now. We might have that budget per year, but we don't have a lot of money. And a lot of money has been lost. It's been wasted. So I really want to make sure the money goes into the people where it belongs and into what's really needed.
Do you have a sense at this point where you think some of the significant waste is?
Yes. Yes, I do. I believe that there's money, there's organizations, there's a lot of bureaucracy in the city, like just the way we handle our, for instance, our benefits when people get their SNAP benefits, the way it's a lot of paperwork that could be really trimmed down and that type of thing. Those organizations need to be really upgraded. I saw that with the unemployment this year. That's on the state level. Our computer systems, our infrastructure, we really need to upgrade that in terms of just simple things like that, the everyday types of organizations that people go into for our city. Our computer system, the Board of Education, for instance, their computer systems seem antiquated. I've been there to get fingerprinted. I used to do substitute teaching, and I couldn't believe how antiquated it was in like the year 2019. It's crazy. So there are things like that that need to really be fixed. We're not on board. We're not like above board in that way. Our technology in our city.
You seem to be focused a lot in what I've seen on your website and your social media about reopening the economy, about restaurants. Speak a little bit about what you think should be happening on that right now. What do you think that should look like? And what do you think the sort of path ahead should look like?
Well, for instance, it's been very haphazard how we've been opening restaurants, closing restaurants. A gym is open, but the restaurant isn't open. There's been certain, health protocols in place that people have been using, but for some reason we decided that restaurants were the ones to suffer and not be able to use these protocols. For instance, the social distancing, the masks, the high vax, all those different types of protocols are in place. And if a business is adhering to it, I don't see why they can't open at least 50% to 100, to 60, 75% capacity if these things could happen. And I don't understand why we're not opening up faster. Specifically, while there are some businesses that are opening that seem more dangerous than other businesses, and it just doesn't make sense. And I think it was done very poorly. And I believe we should end the lockdowns because of it.
Right. I think part of the differentiation there is, you go to the gym, you can wear a mask the whole time. You go out to eat, you have to sort of take it off at different points to eat and drink. Would you prioritize vaccination of restaurant workers then, if you want to accelerate the opening of restaurants? There's been some call.
If the vaccination, if people want to get vaccinated and they feel comfortable, I would let the people, anybody, I first believe anyone wants to get the vaccination, get the vaccination. I think that the vaccination rollout has been an utter disaster. So that needs to totally be revamped. And there needs to be, I think we need to order more vaccines. That should be first and foremost. I know that's a lot on the federal government, but they need to be organized better within our city. And I believe testing should be on like every corner of New York. Like rapid testing should be on every corner of New York City. There's no reason. There could be a storefront and a nurse that can do these tests like in 2 seconds. And that doesn't make sense to me.
Do you think there should be some, as more and more people are vaccinated and the access does improve, and it seems like that's coming at some point here, do you think there should be some sort of requirements to be vaccinated to get into venues? That doesn't strike me as something that would be a libertarian viewpoint, but I know you have a mix of viewpoints. There's some talk that in order to go to a Broadway show or a concert or something, once, more people are vaccinated and those things open back up, that you have to show proof that you've been vaccinated to go in.
Well, I believe that if you want to take the vaccine, you can. I don't believe it should be forced. I don't believe there's some people that aren't comfortable taking it. Some people, their doctors recommend they don't take it. So I don't think that should be the case. I believe that a test at the very least could be required, because I think that's fair. You could have a negative, you could do a swab before you go into a show or a theater if you don't feel comfortable taking the vaccine. I think that's a good option, a good compromise.
Are there other things you think New York City should be doing now or that you would do if elected to enhance the economic revival of the city? Are there ways you would use city policy? Are there things you'd fight for at the state or federal level? Incentives, tax breaks, whatever it might be? Are there things that you think should be done to accelerate the city's economic rebirth?
Yes. Well, for the businesses that are staying open, I would like to give them some sort of tax break, that they've been open, especially essential workers. I think we should on a federal level at least give them some sort of bonus for working so hard. Specifically people who are risking their lives every day for New Yorkers and their fellow New Yorker. I believe that those people should definitely have some sort of tax break or some kind of incentive because they've been working all through. I believe that also that businesses that do adhere to, very strong protocols. I have a whole grading system I created for protocols of, like we have A, B, and C, D for our restaurants. I have a 1 to 5 protocol type situation where if you're very much on the, if you're adhering to your social distancing protocols and you're going above and beyond, you get a 5 versus a 1, which would be like a D in the restaurant business. So I have a grading system. So it would give people incentive to stay, to do the right thing, keep their workers safe, and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
And that's up to them, but they have to stay at least within like the 3 to 5 range to stay open.
Right. You mentioned work in animal rights activism. Do you have platform items as a mayoral candidate of things
Sure.
if you were mayor that you would do on that subject?
I want to turn New York City into a no-kill shelter city, like other cities are. We're falling way behind that. As the greatest city in the world, we kill healthy animals every day for no reason. Because I would add more shelters to our city. I do want to ban the horse carriages. They don't belong on the streets. I'm very strong about that. I want to encourage animal-friendly businesses. I would give incentives to that. People who are adhering to animals, less cruelty practices, there would be incentives to do that as well. And I also want to, encourage restaurants to offer more vegan and vegetarian options as well.
When you say encourage, would there be sort of city policy involved, or would that be more of just a sort of promotional, use the bully pulpit type thing, or would that be using?
I think it would be. I don't think policy necessarily would be the thing, because I think a business is free to do what they want. But I believe that suggesting it, maybe giving incentives would be of some sort, to be maybe a tax incentive if you have more vegan options on your menu. That might not be a bad idea.
Were you aware and involved in city politics, the last open mayor's race in 2013?
A little bit, yeah. I remember there was a lot with the horse banning.
Right.
And it never
That's where I'm
happened.
going. Yeah.
I was really excited about that. Actually, I was like, wow, they're finally taking the horses off the street. There won't be animal suffering, and then never happened.
Didn't happen. Yeah. So I was going to
Not
ask.
even remotely. It didn't even get less. It didn't even happen less.
Right. They've sort of adjusted some things to keep them in the park, in Central Park more, but limited changes. Anything you've learned from watching that saga, which, really was overshadowing a lot of the race at that point, and then also, was a big factor in the first couple of years of Mayor de Blasio's term before it, popped up here and there after, but it kind of, when it fell by the wayside, it took up a lot of oxygen and attention and political capital. Anything you learned from that?
Well, I did learn a lot. I first of all, people were like, where do you want to work? And I have a plan for that. I want to build an equine education center, so the horses could live, people could learn about the horses and the dangers of why they shouldn't be on the streets, and also understand how to take care of horses. So I want those horses go to sanctuaries and be in the equine education center, and the drivers, I want to be able to help them get work in those equine education centers. Mm-hmm. So they can be with the horses, and if they choose to do so, offer them some sort of work. And because this is a good time to do it now that our tourism is down, and they probably aren't even working as much as they should be. So,
And the argument from those folks that those horses are treated extremely well.
I haven't heard that one. I haven't heard it from anybody. People are like, yeah, it's people off the streets. But so I've heard, a lot of my friends are animal rights people, even my friends that aren't, don't like that the horses are there. There's other options. We could do a beautiful streetcar type situation. We're also already congested on the streets. We don't need anything else more to make that happen.
So on your website, you mentioned promoting public safety through a comprehensive police reform. I'm curious if you can outline some of what that would look like. Obviously, it's been a subject
that hotbed subject, yeah,
spanned many years, but has recently been, of course, extremely intense discussion around policing, including the rise in violent crime and gun crime in 2020 that we saw, but obviously the larger movement for police reform. How would you balance all that? What would be some of the key principles of your reform efforts?
First of all, I would want all reports of any sort of overstep totally open to the public. So that's number one. Nothing would be hidden in the darkness. If someone reported an officer doing something inappropriate, and just like they report, officers are also citizens, so we need to treat them that way as well. So the transparency needs to happen immediately. I think that would make a lot of people feel safer. Second of all, I believe that officers also are overwhelmed. They're doing a lot of different jobs. They become a psychologist. They become domestic violence ender. They find lost dog. I believe I want to divide the police office up in different factions. Specifically, people are trained to deal with the homeless. People are trained to deal with domestic violence. I want to get more social workers and psychologists on staff. I believe that's really important to be involved and be actually trained police officers. Like I want psychologists to be trained officers as well as being a psychologist. This way, things can I want to de-escalate things before they become escalated. I want to create different divisions that already even more divide the police office. They only have their division, their MTA, and I want to divide it up into even more pieces. So it gives the officers more specialized. And I want the response time on violent crime to be faster.
And do you think the size of the police force is about right? Do you think it should be smaller, larger? There's roughly 35,000 uniformed officers right now. What do you think?
If those officers are effective, then it's fine. But if they're not effective, then we should cut it down. But we might need more. It depends on what is going on. I believe it depends on what section that the officers are working in. Some, they might be there might be we might need more police down in the subway right now because there's with mental health advocates, because there's a lot of mental health issues going down in the subways right now. A lot of random violent crime coming out of nowhere derived from mental illness or drug addiction, drug episodes. So that's been going on a lot.
When you look at how Mayor de Blasio has handled policing and crime in the city, how do you assess his work on that?
Terrible. I think he's just let everything just go to pieces, and he hasn't really stepped up to the plate and really created a situation that people, both the police and the citizens feel safe. People don't feel safe. That's the number one complaint I've been having from citizens. Like, can you make us feel safer? Can you do things to make us feel safer? And people feel scared of the police. There are a lot of, people of color and people of not of color. They feel they're been over policed. So we need to retrain, restructure the police force, and they need to be ready for that as well.
When you look at Mayor de Blasio, bigger picture, anything you would say that you would continue, in the direction that he's taken things, any positives that you would point out?
I don't really have that much positive to think. I think he tries to be, a strong mayor, but it never worked out. He's always finding he hasn't, when he wants something done, he doesn't usually. It's like him and Cuomo are always in arguments, and I think that's something that's going to have to be done with any mayor, with Cuomo right now. So I think he just doesn't stick to his word, and things just kind of fall. Like, what happened to this and what happened to that? That's a lot of what I hear and what I see. It's like, well, you're supposed to do this and never happened. You're supposed to do that and that never happened. So I think to really, for me, when I in my mayoral world, I would love to just be able to do everything I say I want to do. I don't want to just talk and then not let it happen. I think that's something that politicians do all the time, and I despise it. And I think if you can't do something, you need to tell the people this is we can't do this right now, but let's. And I believe to do things in steps as well. I don't believe also in one day you just change everything and everyone's like in shock. I think we're going to come out of this pandemic with a mental health crisis, and we need to be prepared for that, not first and foremost, and an economic crisis, which you will already see.
Right. On the mental health crisis, I think that's a good final topic before one or two quick last questions, but we're in our last 2 minutes here. Are there ways that you would try to handle the mental health crisis that the city is likely facing right now, or that may even worsen in the months ahead?
I'm preparing for PTSD and an uprise in addictions. I know for a fact that there's not enough beds for people with substance abuse problems and mental health issues. And we're going to have to, and that's a lot of where crime comes from. So if we can get to and homelessness, so if we can get to the core issues, because people always want to fix things on the surface, like let's just put people in homes, but they're mentally ill and they need help. That's not going to help the situation. It's a temporary band-aid. They're not going to stay in their homes or be able to survive in their homes. So to get to the core, it's to solve the core diseases and to really go and encourage mental health people to come to the city. I think there's going to be incentive for that. Now that a lot of people are not going to be back in their offices, I believe that we can turn those into offices for mental health and maybe some medical offices that will help people with issues. I want to get some more rehabs in the city or near the city for people to re-enter into society. I want to close Rikers Island and make it a wholeness, make it almost a recovery and sort of actually a rehab almost. Mm-hmm. So people could have education, rehabilitation. Like I wanted to totally change it into a whole new center.
And I assume that means go forward with the plan to build the new jails that are planned for each borough?
I don't know if I want to build more jails. I want to keep as many people out of jail as possible, but I don't know if jails are the way to go.
Last few seconds here. Do you have a political role model? Anybody you'd point to in politics that you try to emulate or that you've followed and admired?
Larry Sharp. He ran for governor, and he's really, really brilliant man.
Okay. Yeah. 2018 Libertarian Party gubernatorial nominee. Mm-hmm. Stacey Prussman is running for mayor of New York City as a Libertarian. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And thank you for watching Decision NYC with Ben Max. Key decisions for New York City voters are coming up in June and the fall. There's a lot on the line for all of us and the future of this city. I hope this conversation and others are helpful to you. I'm Ben Max. See you next time.